Hello. Hoping to get confirmation that this is working, but I will wait a few minutes before starting. We'll start at noon on the dot. Wonder if the lighting is okay here. Thank you. Needed validation on that. Oh, it's dark. All right. I'm going to relocate. Bear with me so I can get a little bit more consistent lighting. I'll be back in a minute.
Relocating? Yeah. All right. I'm going to go.
Okay. I think this is better now. Couple more minutes. Okay. It's 12 o'clock, so I'll get started now. I am Raquel Perlman. I am very glad to be here today. Thank you so much for the invitation and the opportunity. This is Mindfulness and Stress Management, part of COVID-19 and NMO from the Expert Series, which is hosted by the Sumaira Foundation and made possible by a patient grant from Viela Bio. So just a little bit about myself first. I'm a social worker, and my current job is the director of the caregiver program, which is located in Brooklyn, the Heights and Hills agency, which serves older adults. And our mission is to support people in their aging. Career has been on mental health, aging, and chronic illness. And I have a personal and professional interest in how mindfulness can be effective in reducing stress. And I also have a personal and professional relationship to autoimmune diseases, as I myself have rheumatoid arthritis and take immunosuppressants. So I'm right there with you, going through this global pandemic as somebody who is immunocompromised and handling all of the additional stress that comes along with that. So, before I start talking about mindfulness strategies, I want to start by saying that these are extremely challenging times. Everybody knows that. And it's okay to not be thriving. You may feel that you're comparing yourself to other people sometimes, especially when you're on social media. But really, all you can do is your very best. So it's okay to not be thriving, and everyone has their own unique challenges. But if you are feeling that those challenges or your levels of distress are so severe that it's impacting your ability to function in everyday life, then I do strongly recommend reaching out for professional support. And I know that Sumaira will be posting some additional resources on social media after this is over. And if you already have an underlying mental health concern, such as depression or anxiety, you may find that these unprecedented times and the uncertainty is exacerbating some of those symptoms. So, hopefully, if that is the case, you already have a therapist, maybe even a psychiatrist. So, just make sure that you're working with your mental health team, reaching out for support when you need it. Mindfulness is just one piece of the puzzle. We already know that there are many other things that we can do to stay on track, to reduce our stress. You may be inundated with recommendations to get on a schedule and get, proper sleep and stay socially connected and move your body. So those are all really important pieces of the puzzle. And today we'll talk about mindfulness as another strategy. Um, so I'll go through 5 techniques, and then open it up for questions. The first technique that I want to talk about is, first, let me talk about what mindfulness is. Um, Mindfulness is very simple, but it's very powerful. It is simply noticing without judgment. It's an enhanced awareness of your experience, whether it's your emotional experience, your physical sensations, the thoughts in your mind, your breath, just an increased awareness of the current moment. And anxiety, in its essence, is worrying about the future. So the more that we can practice bringing ourselves to the current moment, the more that we can manage our anxiety. So the other part of it, aside from being in the current moment, is really the non-judgment part of it. So we're not trying to attain any goal, although sometimes reduced stress is a benefit. It's really just inherently beneficial to stay present and to check in with yourself. We can easily go through the world with our mind elsewhere, but that's not always very helpful. Okay, so now that we've talked about what mindfulness is, I'll start with the first mindfulness strategy to help reduce stress during these difficult times, which is really just checking in with yourself. And there's no special term for this, but it's taking a moment to say to yourself, what am I feeling right now? It's probably a time of stress that you will most benefit from this, but it doesn't need to be. And I'll do it with you right now, and maybe you can do it at home if you feel comfortable. So you can notice how your body feels in this moment. Are there any points of tension, any discomfort or pain? For me, I feel my stress in my jaw. Sometimes my jaw is clenched or tight. Maybe your heart rate is elevated or a knot in your stomach. That might not be the case right now, but those are all possibilities. And you just notice those things without judgment. And then you can also check in with your emotions. Are you feeling bored right now? Are you feeling sad right now? Are you feeling nervous about something? And once you have an awareness of what's going on, you simply accept it. Sometimes I'll even put a hand or two hands over my heart and say, it's okay. I hear you. Just to acknowledge myself and my experience with compassion and with kindness instead of trying to push it away. You may have heard the equation that pain times resistance equals suffering. So the more we resist something, the more suffering we'll experience from it. So that's really the first strategy, is just noticing and accepting without judgment how you're feeling. The second technique is called belly breathing. So I'll explain a little bit of the science behind it. So when you are feeling stressed, anxious, scared, uncomfortable, unsafe, your sympathetic nervous system is activated. That is your fight, flight, or freeze response. And that is associated with quicker heart rate, shallow breathing, tense muscles. It's preparing you to keep yourself safe, to protect yourself. Then, on the other hand, when you are feeling relaxed, calm, safe, at ease, your parasympathetic nervous system is activated, and that is associated with slower breathing, slower heart rate, relaxed muscles. So while your emotions can affect your body, also by changing your physiology, your body, such as your breathing, you can also affect your emotions. So it goes both ways. So I'm going to lead you through just a very short belly breathing exercise. These are sort of the basics, and then there are ways to sort of go to the next level with it. But the first step is, once again, checking in with yourself, noticing how you feel, maybe getting comfortable in your seat. You can close your eyes if you'd like, but you don't have to. You're also going to put a hand on your abdomen. You can also put one on your chest if you'd like. And the reason that you're going to put your hand on your abdomen is because you're going to try to breathe into your abdomen slowly and deeply, but only do what feels comfortable to you. Go at your own pace. And you're going to breathe in slowly through your nose and in a way that pushes out your stomach instead of your chest, and breathe out through your mouth as if you're blowing through a straw like this. So we'll just go through it together a few times with your hand on your belly, maybe your eyes closed, and we'll breathe in and out. In and out. Once again, this is into your stomach and out. A couple more times. And last time. So you can open your eyes, and I don't know about you, but I feel a lot calmer after having done that. And it's something that you can do just for a minute or longer if it feels good. You can do it while lying in bed. And once again, that's activating the parasympathetic nervous system to induce feelings of calm and relaxation. And this is evidence-based. You know, there's been a lot of research into this. So I don't want to go on for too much longer, but I do want to talk to you about a couple more techniques to use mindfulness for stress management. So the third one is using enjoyable activities as a way to uplift ourselves and kind of tip the scales into more pleasantness and joy in our lives. So, this is part of cognitive behavioral theory and cognitive behavioral therapy, which once again is evidence based. And the idea is that any activity that we do throughout our day, we can do without thinking. We can be on automatic pilot. But there are plenty of activities in our day that could be enjoyable if we bring our intention and our awareness to them. So, for example, I like to have a cup of coffee in the morning, but I can easily drink that cup of coffee while reading the news and being worried and stressed. And all of a sudden, my cup of coffee is gone and I haven't even noticed it or enjoyed it. Drinking that cup of coffee mindfully with awareness can turn it into something pleasant and enjoyable and uplifting and nourishing. So, on the other hand, drinking the cup of coffee mindfully might involve holding it in my hands and noticing the warmth of the mug and how comforting that is, enjoying the taste of it and noticing how my body is waking up from it. And now that cup of coffee has become something pleasant. And you might even want to make a list of all of the pleasant activities that you can enjoy while you're stuck at home. And maybe even make a schedule to ask yourself to do two of those a day. It can be very simple, just having a hot shower or playing with your pet, painting your nails, listening to music. But the idea is that you're bringing your awareness and your intention to it. You're saying, this is for me, I'm doing this as something that is fun. I need a sip of water. Okay. The fourth mindfulness strategy is a body scan. I won't lead you through one because it does take some time. I recognize not everybody has the luxury of time, so I'm trying to give you some strategies that you can use either in a longer form or something really quick that you can just throw into your day. So, a body scan really just involves bringing awareness, once again, noticing without judgment each part of your body, either from sort of top to bottom or bottom to top. You can notice your toes. You can do one foot at a time or both at the same time and make your way up through the body, all the way up to your face and your head. And you can do that by just bringing awareness to each body part or by intentionally trying to relax that body part physically. And both of those strategies have been shown in research to have a really positive impact. It reduces perceived stress, it increases self compassion, and it can also reduce rumination. So, that's another nice way to use mindfulness to bring awareness to your body and to reduce stress. The last strategy that I'll talk about is mindfulness meditation, which is what a lot of people think about when the term mindfulness comes up. But there are so many ways to incorporate mindfulness into your life. And I will say that with practice and with regularity, these techniques or practices become even more beneficial over time. They are not necessarily something that comes to us naturally, but we can cultivate the practice and get more benefits from it by doing it regularly. Mindfulness meditation is usually like a seated practice, or you can be lying down. And it's when you probably close your eyes and you try to focus on your breath. And while you are noticing your breath, you're going to get distracted. You're going to notice physical sensations in your body. You're going to notice noises in the room. You're going to notice thoughts. Your thoughts may be all over the place. And you're just going to notice all of those experiences, all of those things that are arising in your consciousness without judgment. Let them pass, and you come back to your breath as an anchor. And sometimes people will say, that makes me anxious even to try and sit and do that. And I hear you. You don't have to do it by any means, but it's another thing that you can just be aware of if you do want to try this practice. You can just notice, oh, I feel anxious. Okay, now I'll come back to my breath. The last thing that I want to say before I open up for questions is this is not related to mindfulness and stress management. It's sort of just a message of strength. I'll speak for myself, and maybe this will ring true for you. Having gone through all the stages of an autoimmune disease, from having symptoms that I wasn't sure what was going on with me, getting a diagnosis and wondering what that meant, trying all different medications and not knowing what will work or when will it stop working, wondering what my future will hold and will I be okay. All of those experiences are about uncertainty. There is so much uncertainty with an autoimmune disease. And our current world situation is also an unprecedented level of uncertainty. So you likely have already built up some resilience and strength in relation to your autoimmune disease and that uncertainty. And I believe that we can all tap into that strength and wisdom to help us in our current global pandemic situation. So thank you for your attention, and I'll be glad to answer some questions now. All right. Scrolling through. No questions yet. I have some other things that I can talk about if there aren't any questions yet. But I'll wait a moment. Okay. Well, while I'm checking in on I just want to make sure I'm looking at the comments and that I'm not missing anything. But one person whose wisdom and information has helped me a lot lately is Brene Brown. And she talks about terrible first times. She has a different name for it, FFTs, but for family-friendly purposes, I will call them TFTs, terrible first times. And the idea is that every time that we do something for the first time, like present a talk on Facebook Live, we'll get to that in a minute, Sumaira, it's going to be really hard the first time. And our whole world right now is in a TFT, a terrible first time. And there are three kind of steps to address that, ways to make it through. And the first one is to normalize it. Normalize your feelings about it. It's normal to be scared. It's normal to feel sad. All of your reactions are normal. The second part of it is to put it in perspective. So that may mean something different for you than it does to somebody else, but maybe putting it in perspective means that you focus on what you do have. I have shelter, I have food, I have my medication, and that kind of thing. And then the last part of it is to reality check expectations. So maybe when you're thriving, when things are going really well, you're exercising multiple times a week and you're eating really healthy and all of that. And maybe right now, those things are not happening all the time. And you can just shift your expectations a little bit and make sure that they're realistic and that they're attainable and that you're being kind to yourself about what you're expecting of yourself. Okay. First, to respond to Sumaira, natural remedies or techniques. Okay, so sleep has been such an issue for me. I can relate to anybody who has been having trouble sleeping, especially lately. I won't talk about natural remedies from like a medicine perspective because as a social worker, I'm not a doctor, but certainly I can speak to other ways to help when you are having trouble sleeping. One of them is sleep hygiene. You may be familiar with that. It's like not watching TV right before bed, especially not the news. Maybe not having your phone, or if you are on your phone, doing things that are scrolling related, that are more interactive, are going to prevent you from falling asleep more so than things that are more passive. Like if you're using your phone as an e-reader and you're just reading a book, that's different than scrolling through Twitter or Instagram. Um, the belly breathing absolutely can help just slow down your heart rate and put you into a more relaxed state of mind. Also, a lot of times the anxiety around falling asleep is worse than anything else, and really is what's causing the lack of sleep. So sometimes what I will do when I'm having trouble falling asleep is just asking myself, what's the worst case scenario? What's the worst case scenario is for me that I don't sleep at all. I don't get one wink of sleep. And then I say, okay, what will happen if that is the case? Well, I'll be tired tomorrow, but I'll get through. I'll have an extra cup of coffee, or, maybe I won't be at my peak performance, but it's going to be okay. And then once I have addressed the worst case scenario with myself, then it takes a little bit of the pressure off of myself. Um, the last thing I will say, and there's a lot of research out there, and you can certainly go online and find some other meditations to help you sleep, is to increase sleep pressure, which actually means trying to go to sleep later than you normally would to build up your sleepiness, essentially. So, those are just a few ideas. Okay. Every day I wake up and I just cry watching the news or just reading things that is happening with this whole pandemic, and I can't stop. I take walks to get away, but coming back home, it is there. How do I deal? Yeah, I hear you. I really do. Taking walks is great, and I give you credit for noticing that that's something that you need, that you're checking in with yourself and supporting yourself however you can. But yes, it's still there when you get home. So everyone's situation is different. I'm not sure if you are going back home to an empty home and you live alone, or if you're going back home to family. And those are very different experiences. On one hand, if you're with family, and you're welcome to respond, and I can continue to sort of tailor the question, but if you're surrounded by other people, that can bring on more, different stressors than when you're by yourself. If you're around family, you're making sure that you're meeting their needs. Maybe they're driving you crazy. Maybe you're trying to get work done and you can't because they're there. And if you're alone, that can be, you're stuck with your own thoughts. You don't have the distraction or the support of the other people that are right there with you. So what I recommend is limit the amount of news that you're taking in. I know it's so important to stay informed, but we can do that in a way that is in pockets. So maybe you set some kind of deal with yourself. Maybe you check the news in the morning, and maybe once more, around lunchtime, and then that's it for the day. Not that much can really change overnight. Yes, things are changing constantly, but also gradually and slowly. So stay informed, but also limit the amount of news that we're intaking. It's endless, and the news, the media is going to continue to put out as much as they possibly can to keep us watching. So just have a few trusted sources and stick with those. Um, And it's okay to find other distractions, to take your mind off things. Yes, it's important that we check in with ourselves, that we notice how we're feeling, that we tend to our needs. But if what you need is to get your mind off of things, I mean, taking a walk is wonderful. And if not, if you're able to do that, then by all means. But maybe when you get back home, instead of turning on the news, you read a novel or you put on a silly television show that makes you smile, or you try to cook something new, or any number of things. And that's another time when it's good to have a sort of list of activities that will uplift you, or at least keep things neutral rather than adding to your stress. Having scheduled time to check in with friends and family is good, although I know that can be triggering too. And I just want to once again validate how sad and scary all of this is. And I don't think you're alone in, you know, being tearful or distressed by what we see in the world. Okay. Any suggestions on dealing with family that you think are overreacting to this virus while you are trying to keep yourself safe? Being blamed for being selfish. Yeah, totally. Once again, I don't think you're alone in this, and everyone is going to have a different level of anxiety around it, a different way that they feel that they are keeping themselves safe. So some people may feel that they are keeping themselves safe by staying informed constantly. Some people may feel that they are keeping themselves safe by wiping down every single grocery that they bring into their house. And somebody else may feel that isn't necessary for them. Um, this is another thing that I heard Brene Brown say recently, and I totally agree, which is it's hard enough managing our own feelings, our own reactions, and then adding to that, trying to control somebody else's is, a fruitless and stressful exercise. So, concrete suggestions on dealing with family that think you are overreacting. As difficult as this may seem, and coming from a mental health professional, it's very different than when you're talking to your own family. But maybe you can try saying, I hear you. You are feeling scared, but I really ask you to focus on your own reaction, your own way of keeping yourself safe, and I will focus on my own way of keeping myself safe. Being blamed for being selfish. If you are taking all of the precautions, wearing gloves, wearing a mask, washing your hands, social distancing, that's about all that you can do. And you can remind them that you are doing those things, but that you are trying to live your life in your own way. Using I statements is never a bad thing. If you can tell them how it makes you feel when they call you selfish, you can say, I feel even more stressed out when you put your fears onto me, something like that. Um, you can also draw boundaries and say, when you're talking to me this way, it really just stresses me out, and I'm gonna have to go if it continues. So that may be easier said than done, but those are just a few ideas. Okay. So the question is, when were you diagnosed with your NMO? How long did it take you? How long did it take you to feel comparatively normal physically and mentally? So I don't have NMO. I have rheumatoid arthritis, which is a different autoimmune disease. So I can't speak specifically to NMO, and I'm sorry that I can't relate exactly to your experience. It seems, from what I can tell, that the community that Sumaira and the Sumaira Foundation has created is incredibly supportive, has a wealth of information and a wealth of ways to connect with people who have been through it and may be able to speak more directly to your experience. Um, but even so, autoimmune diseases are mysterious and so individual, that you will likely be on your own journey anyway, even if you are, staying informed and gathering lots of information and setting expectations. So the best thing I can say at this point is stay in tune with your needs. Ask yourself, how can I best support myself at this time? Maybe it's getting a little extra sleep. Maybe it's reaching out to a friend or family. Maybe it's talking to your doctor about adjusting something, but just making sure that your needs are being met. And when you're especially early on in a diagnosis, it's okay for the scales to be a little bit tipped in the direction of receiving more support than giving it. So yes, we all want to be wonderful friends, wonderful parents, wonderful relatives, coworkers to the people in our life. But when you have a recent diagnosis, it's okay to be more on the receiving end of support. Are the emotional ups and downs normal? Yes. Thank you so much for asking that. All of these questions have been really wonderful, and thank you for feeling comfortable asking them. So, there are going to be ups and downs. We are all riding these crazy waves. And that's part of where mindfulness can play a part, is that it may hit you, the sadness or the fear. And that's when you can just notice it and say, yeah, I feel scared, and it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to feel anyway. Every feeling is valid. I would just say that if the downs are really down, if they're impacting your ability to function, then it may be time to reach out for more professional support. Maybe to try contacting a therapist or a helpline or something like that. But we are definitely, we can all expect to have ups and downs, and even times when things feel kind of normal. And then I sometimes will have that for a minute, and then I feel like jolted out of it, or even guilty that I felt normal for a minute, when there are so many people who it maybe never feels normal. So, yes, expect ups and downs, and be kind to yourself as you go through them. Stress is trigger for autoimmune disease flare-ups, and managing our individual stress amidst this pandemic has been quite the challenge. What are some suggestions you can offer to alleviate stress? Music, meditation, nutrition, exercise, etc. Yeah, those are all great suggestions, and totally, what's good for the mind is good for the body, regardless of the illness that you're experiencing. Emotional well-being is good for physical well-being. They're totally intertwined. So so it's important to prioritize our emotional well-being on top of everything that we're doing for our physical well-being. It's going to be different for everyone, and that's a little bit where we're making like a list of things can come into play, and not just a list of enjoyable activities that you do with intention and with awareness, but a list of ways that works for you to support yourself. So some people will say meditation's not my thing, and that's fine. You know, it can be a little bit frustrating when somebody tells you Maybe you share that you're feeling depressed and they say, well, you just need to exercise more, or, oh, have you tried this diet? It really helps. So there's not one cure all. It's a regular daily thing of integrating lots of different supportive and uplifting and helpful things to manage our stress. Um, I'll share some of my own. So I do have a daily meditation that I do. It's just for 10 minutes, and that feels manageable for me. I like to exercise, but I make sure that it's fun. Some exercise feels like a chore, but I like to do dance cardio, and that's something that's uplifting for me. Um, I like to read. That takes my mind off things and brings me into a different world. And some people will like to cook. Some people will, have hour-long chats with their friends. So there are, countless ways that we can manage our stress. And you can think of it like a toolkit. So, I talked about some mindfulness stress management techniques to add to your toolkit, but everyone's toolkit is going to be very individualized to them and what works for them. So you might need to play around with it and try different things and see what is fun for you and what is effective for you. But certainly, you know, eat, sleep, move your body, all of those things, are going to be part of the package deal. How can a person feel less stress when someone from the household has to go to work? Yeah, that is a huge question, and I feel for you. I imagine that the person who has to go to work is an essential worker, maybe a healthcare worker, maybe in a grocery store, whatever it may be. There are inherent risks of going out into the world, whether it's to work or whether it's to do, a run to the store. And, the CDC has guidelines for staying safe. You probably already know the best way to manage hygiene, maybe even changing clothes when they come back into the house, washing hands, wiping surfaces. But how can a person feel less stress? I wish I had a good answer for you. I think that talking about it can be helpful. Maybe not in a way where you're expecting a solution, but maybe it's with that person or maybe it's with somebody else. And to say, I'm feeling kind of anxious right now about the spread of the virus. And then maybe that person can reassure you of all the ways that they have been protecting themselves. Um, if you are following every guideline possible, the only thing left to do is to be accepting of your experience, to notice it and tell yourself it's normal to feel stressed, it's normal to feel worried, and to just give yourself a little love and compassion. If you're like activated and your heart rate is up and your breathing is shallow, a grounding technique might be helpful just to bring you into the present. The deep breathing into your belly can calm down your nervous system. And I'll let you know if I think of anything else to address that question, but that's a really tricky one, and you're certainly not alone in worrying about it. Being legally blind with social distancing going on, how can we not feel more worthless, so to say? Wow. Yeah. So my personal reaction to that is that every human is inherently so valuable and so worthy, of love and of everything else. And working with the older adult population, that's a question that I come into a lot, which is, maybe they've stopped working, they've retired, or maybe they can't even do anything for themselves, these older adults with physical disabilities, and helping them understand that there's a difference between usefulness and purpose. So while you may not be able to provide maybe some concrete service to the world or to a job, you can still find purpose in your everyday life. And maybe that purpose is to connect with other people who are also legally blind and tell them that you're feeling this way, and giving them the courage to say that they feel this way too, and knowing that they are not alone. These are tough times, and any underlying emotions of maybe fear of worthlessness or fear of not being good enough can be exacerbated by our lack of connection to others. Once again, that sort of self-compassion is can be useful in this scenario, to just check in with yourself, and you can even say, I'm feeling worthless right now, and then you can do that thing that I do, which is put a hand on my heart and give myself some TLC. Every emotion is valid, but not every thought is true. So let me actually go through a little acronym to help address some thoughts that may be causing you distress. So I think this can go for a lot of different people. I certainly often have this thought, which is, I'm not good enough. So sharing a little personal experience with you. And that thought, or any thought that causes distress, can be held up to scrutiny. This is a technique also from cognitive behavioral theory, where you address the thought and you ask some questions about it. So the acronym is THINK, THINK. So the T stands for true. Is this thought true? And you can ask yourself, is there evidence for it? Is there evidence against it? The H stands for helpful. Is it helpful for me to be focusing on this thought right now? Is it inspiring? Is this thought inspiring me to feel good, to feel motivated, or is it having the opposite effect? The N in think stands for necessary. Is it necessary for me to be focusing on this thought right now? And the K stands for kind. Is it a kind thought? So for me, when I have that thought of fearful of not being good enough, I can go through some of those questions in that acronym: think, true, helpful, inspiring, necessary, and kind. And then maybe it can help me find a more true or a more helpful or a kinder thought to replace that with. So maybe instead of saying fearing not being good enough, I end up with the thought, I'm trying my very best, and that's all I can ask of myself. So thank you for asking. Do you think that the stigma and perception surrounding mental health will shift to a more positive outlook after the pandemic? It's clear that mental health is as important as our physical health, and we all need support. Oftentimes, people refrain from talking about their feelings or even going to a therapist for fear that people will think they're crazy. Yeah. Sumaira, awesome. I love that. Yes, totally. We are being in social isolation, being stuck at home. We are all forced to confront ourselves more than ever before, to be more in tune with our feelings. And that's the very first step. That's mindfulness as well. Just noticing. We are more inspired to reach out to people, to make sure that we're connecting, to check in with each other. I mean, I'm getting emails from work that are signed, stay safe, stay sane. And that message of strength and hope from sometimes a stranger, sometimes a coworker, is, I think, part of a larger picture of our society coming together to address this crazy situation together. I know that, Sumaira, you were talking about the benefit last night that raised a lot of money, and Lady Gaga was talking about mental health and how important it is. And absolutely, our brain is part of our body. Our emotions are part of our experience on Earth, and everybody suffers. Everybody is scared. Everybody gets sad. No one is alone in their emotions. Therapy is an amazing tool, and so many people can benefit from it. I think, if it was available, if it was affordable, more people would access it, and also if the stigma around mental health wasn't as strong. And I do think it's been getting better over time and will continue to get better. I hope that some of the things that you've read in the feed, and some of the things that I have talked about today can also contribute a little bit to that shift that our society is seeing. Oh, yes, ASMR videos on YouTube. I love ASMR videos. If you don't know about them, I'm trying to remember the acronym. It's autonomic or automatic sensory meridian response, something like that. And the idea is that certain sounds or certain visual experiences will give you this meridian response of kind of like tingles. And it's just a pleasant experience. It's very relaxing, and not everybody experiences this meridian response, but many people do, and they have different triggers, maybe like nails tapping, or sometimes it's like somebody's voice whispering, and a lot of time I've read a lot of research about it, and one of the ideas behind it is that it feels personalized to the viewer, to the audience member. So you feel, even though it's a stranger on YouTube, it feels like they are providing this service just for you. And that alone can increase feelings of connection and warmth. So if that sounds interesting to you, definitely check out ASMR videos on YouTube. I think that is maybe an ASMR video that somebody posted. What's the best way to manage PTSD during these challenging times? Yeah, absolutely. PTSD is a very common mental health concern or mental illness that people have. And trauma is it's about fearing for your safety, fearing for your life in some way, and experiencing a threat to your life, to your safety. With this global pandemic, there is definitely an increased feeling of threat to our safety, which can be triggering for PTSD symptoms. If you are already being treated for PTSD with psychotherapy and medication, certainly stay on that regimen, and maybe even talk to your therapist about increasing sessions or giving you additional tools. PTSD is also one of the symptoms is hypervigilance, and that activated nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, feelings of the flight or fight response. So breathing exercises can reduce that stress response. That is one way to address it. That is not the only way. And I don't mean to minimize anybody's experience to say that deep breathing is going to cure you of anything. But it has been shown to slow down the heart rate, slow down the breathing, and bring you more into the current moment. One more thing I'll say about that is if you are feeling like you're having a panic attack or you can't catch your breath and it's not related to COVID-19, there are many grounding exercises out there, but one of them that I'll tell you about quickly is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise, which I think it goes like this. You identify 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. So it's grounding because it's bringing you back into your body and giving you some concrete physical things to focus on that are not related to your stress response. However, for PTSD, it's a serious concern, and I do encourage anyone experiencing that to, if they're feeling like they need extra support, to reach out for it. And Sumaira will be posting, like I said, I think earlier, some additional resources, mental health resources, helplines, things like that. And we're close to, okay, we have a few minutes left. Can you offer any guidance or support in light of heightened domestic violence in quarantine? It's a serious concern. It's a serious issue. The best thing that I can say is contact an agency that specializes in this. Domestic violence is not my area of focus, and I didn't include any particular resources on domestic violence. But I do believe that any of the crisis helplines or other resources I provided would be able to point you in the right direction. Reach out for help in the safest way possible. I also understand that sometimes reaching out for help can feel like it puts you in greater danger. So it's important to do it in a way that feels right to you. If you are able to make a phone call to a domestic violence helpline in a way that feels safe, please do so. I know that at least in Brooklyn where I work, the resources that are available have been sending out additional information to say that they're there, they're ready to help, and wherever you live, there may be some local resources, or for somebody else who might be experiencing this, local resources for them too. So those are all of the questions for now. I'll give it another minute before I wrap up. Okay, well, I know I didn't solve anybody's, problems, but hopefully I've given you some additional tools or techniques or ideas to help you manage your stress by using mindfulness, which once again is just being in the present moment, noticing what comes up in your body, in your emotions, in your thoughts, and noticing them without judgment, and maybe even with some compassion, kindness, and acceptance. So, thank you once again for your time, your attention, for taking this time to educate yourself. Stay strong and know that you are not alone. Thank you.